Today, we need to talk about Donkey Kong. It's been over 10 years since this little fella got a new game, and in that time, all we've had are remasters. Tropical Freeze onto the Switch, and Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, which just released back in January. And I think it's easy for a lot of fans to look at this and it feels like Donkey Kong kind of got left out. The Switch generation has been so fruitful for so many franchises, getting new entries that really reinvent the franchise and bring them back to the forefront. But Donkey Kong kind of got the shaft, it feels like. We didn't get any new Donkey Kong games on Switch, and what we did get was just ports. Great games, don't get me wrong, but they were old games. But with Donkey Kong being such a prominent part of the Mario movie, with there being a section of Super Nintendo World that is entirely Donkey Kong themed, and with there being a new design for the character in the new Mario Kart, while I can understand the skepticism of recent years, I think the future of Donkey Kong is actually extremely bright. In fact, I'm so optimistic about the future of Donkey Kong, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a new game announced on April 2nd at the Switch 2 Direct, and beyond that, I think we could actually end up seeing almost annualized Donkey Kong games. Of course, as always, if you are new here and you enjoy Donkey Kong content, but also Nintendo, Switch 2, speculation, theories, discussion, I would appreciate you subscribing. Let's get into it. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to sit down and talk about Donkey Kong today because ever since that Mario Kart trailer back in January, or ever since that teaser was in the Switch 2 reveal, I feel like I've been seeing a growing negativity around this character and the future of this franchise. And honestly, I'm kind of left scratching my head wondering why, because to me, we look at the new design for Donkey Kong. We'll talk more about him in just a second. We look at how much Nintendo has been pushing Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. We look at the theme park. We look at the movie. I feel like the future is so bright to the point where, like I said at the beginning, I actually could see there being almost annualized Donkey Kong releases moving forward. Be that new entries, 2D or 3D, be that more spin-offs like Mario vs. Donkey Kong, be that a dedicated movie. I don't think it's out of the realm of question that Illumination and Nintendo partnered to make a Donkey Kong spin-off movie. Maybe once we get that original Mario trilogy done, like, I think they'll keep expanding it, and I think Donkey Kong is, barring Luigi's Mansion, the smartest way to go there. And yeah, I do think we could see whatever the next Donkey Kong game is announced on April 2nd. I'm not locking it in as a prediction, but I'm not going to be shocked if he does because of how much they've been pushing it. And even if they don't announce it on April 2nd, I do think by the end of 2026, we will see a new Donkey Kong game released. Maybe this is hopium speaking, but in 2024, we had Mario vs. Donkey Kong, which, while not literally a Donkey Kong game like we would like, it is a Donkey Kong game. He is in the title, he's on the box art, he's on the title screen. It might not be a platformer, it might not be a 3D adventure game, but it is a Donkey Kong game. And then in 2025, we had Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. And I think I said this in a video back when Country Returns HD was announced, that it honestly kind of gives me the vibes of when they announced New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, and then a few months later, they announced Super Mario Maker 2. It felt like they were getting it out of the way before whatever was next for 2D Mario. I think Country Returns coming out in January, being kind of squeezed in at the end of the Switch's life cycle, to me, that is them clearing the slates almost. It was an obvious game to get a remaster. It's an easy game to remaster, and I'm sure it's going to sell a lot of copies. But now, you know, the slate is cleared and they can really focus on the future, because outside of maybe a DK64 remake, I mean, what other Donkey Kong games really make that much sense when it comes to getting a full remaster or remake? I guess maybe Jungle Beat could happen eventually, but I'm not really expecting that. So I do think that in 2026, we will get some sort of new Donkey Kong game, be that a 2D or a 3D game. And then in 2027, maybe we're talking about maybe a Jungle Beat remaster, or what I think is likelier, either another remake of another Mario vs. Donkey Kong game, or a new game in that same style from Nintendo Software Technology. That remake did pretty well, so if they just want to make more levels and sell it as Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2, very weird series because we had DK94, which is a little different, then we had the GBA game that got remade, and then they had the DS and 3DS games that are all kind of different, more Lemmings style. If we got a proper sequel to the GBA game in 2027, and then from there, maybe something else in 2028, I actually think there is a pipeline here where we have almost annualized Donkey Kong content, which is why I'm just so surprised to see the negativity surrounding his redesign, surrounding Donkey Kong Country Returns even existing, because to me, these things are actually great signs. Why would they go to the trouble of not redesigning him because it, follows the movie design, but also some older designs from Rare and Nintendo, even pre-Rare, is kind of in this design a little bit. To me, I look at this and I'm like, oh, this is exciting because it means they want to do something with Donkey Kong. He has been dormant for so long because, well, I'm guessing Nintendo couldn't find a developer. Retro Studios got put on, well, they were working on a new IP that got canceled, and now they're doing Metroid Prime 4. There was the rumor that Liam Robertson over at Did You Know Gaming kind of broke open about this Donkey Kong project codenamed Freedom from Activision, and I believe Vicarious Visions, and they were gonna make a Donkey Kong game for the Switch, but Activision actually ended up shutting that game down, canceling it because they wanted to put those developers onto the Call of Duty cycle, just making skins and stuff, whatever the case may be. So there was a pipeline where we would have gotten a new Donkey Kong game on the Nintendo Switch had that not happened, and in the absence of it, they did remaster 2 Donkey Kong games for the platform. There's not that many franchises on Switch that have had 2 remasters. In fact, the only one that comes to mind is Xenoblade, now that Xenoblade X is coming out, but most of Nintendo's series have only had 1 remaster on the Switch, if any at all. Kirby got Return to Dreamland Deluxe, Paper Mario got Thousand Year Door, Luigi's Mansion got Luigi's Mansion 2, but not 2 remasters. So they acknowledged that there was an absence of new games by porting more than they have for other series, in my opinion. It was just kind of unfortunate timing with Retro being put on Metroid Prime 4 and then them not being able to find a new developer for this game. Which does beg maybe the most important question of, if Retro is busy with Metroid Prime 4 and likely Metroid Prime 5 after that, who could actually make a new Donkey Kong game, be that a 2D game or a 3D game? I know everybody wants a new 3D Donkey Kong game, DK64, very nostalgic for me. I love that game. A lot of people want either a remake of that or just a new 3D Donkey Kong game. I think that might be asking a little bit much because there aren't really that many developers that are, I would say, free right now to make a 3D platformer on that scale with that level of talent. The only team that I think could really do it well is the 3D Mario team. And while it'd be really cool to see them take on something different from 3D Mario, I don't know if they're going to prioritize a DK game over 3D Mario. However, there was a rumor a couple of years back that that same team, EPD8, the 3D Mario team, there were rumors based on hirings as well as, I believe, an account called DK Vine saying that he had heard from his sources that Nintendo EPD8 was working on a 2D Donkey Kong game, and people kind of, let some credence to it because they were hiring for a 2D game. I think after that happened, Nate the Hate, who has proven himself very reliable, especially in recent times, he had said his sources told him there was an EPD8 Donkey Kong game being developed. And when you look at the gap between Mario Odyssey and whatever this new 3D Mario game that's coming out is, it does make you wonder, is it possible that at some point they were like, man, we don't want to release a new 3D Mario on the Switch 1. We already have Bowser's Fury on top of Odyssey. We don't need to waste it, so to speak, on the Switch 1. We should save it as a Switch 2 game. Is there a reality where maybe the next 3D Mario game has been done for a while, or they knew it was going to be done before the Switch 2 came out, so they greenlit another smaller project, and could that be a 2D Donkey Kong game? This is the same team that made Jungle Beats. It's one of the few times in the past 3 decades that a Donkey Kong game was actually developed internally at Nintendo, so there is some history there, and if any of Nintendo's own studios are going to do it, they're really the only option, I think, unless we get some crazy reboots, maybe from Next Level or something. We don't know for sure that they're doing Luigi's Mansion 4. I think it is likely, but maybe not. Maybe we get a new Donkey Kong game from them. Maybe that could be a 3D platformer, and maybe we get Luigi's Mansion 4 a little bit later into the Switch 2 lifecycle than a lot of us are expecting. That'd be very interesting, and honestly, I'd be all for it. Give them even more time with Luigi's Mansion 4 to cook it up, but also give them a new project based on another Nintendo IP. For a long time there, Next Level was kind of seen as the revived dead franchise team. Punch-Out was them, Federation Force was them, like it or not. Even Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon on 3DS, that was considered a revival at the time. So if they wanted to take on another thing on top of Luigi's Mansion 4, maybe Donkey Kong would be a good fit for them. There are a few other developers I feel like we should at the very least mention here. So first up, and this is an idea I had a long time ago, unfortunately I don't think it's going to line up because this team ended up making another new thing that we would have never had otherwise, but Goodfeel, the developers of Kirby's Epic Yarn, as well as Yoshi's Woolly World and Crafted World, I was saying, you know, early Switch days that like it'd be really cool if they maybe made a yarn-based or, you know, kind of crafty-based aesthetic Donkey Kong Country game. Maybe you wouldn't call it country, but it would be a 2D Donkey Kong game in that style, maybe a little bit more chill like the Yoshi games are. I feel like that would have been a good fit, but considering they just released Bakaru, their own game, as well as Princess Peach Showtime, considering we don't have any Yoshi games in the pipeline seemingly, I think it's likely safe to say that they're making another Yoshi game, because I don't know, I mean, that's a whole other topic. I don't know who else would be put on another Yoshi game, but I do think it's important to have Yoshi games. I do think we'll get Woolly World ported to the Switch or Switch 2 in the coming years. Actually, I think it's going to happen this year, to be honest, but Goodfeel would have been a cool one, but I don't think it really works out that way for a new Donkey Kong game from them. There's also Retro Studios, which we talked about. I think they're on Metroid Prime duty. Nintendo has invested so much money and resources into Retro Studios to make Prime 4. Honestly, I think Metroid Prime 5 from them is likely already like in development, not even pre-production. I think Metroid Prime 4 has been done for a while. Maybe they had a, you know, portion of their team porting it to Switch 2, making it look all pretty and all that. But based on how much they put into Prime 4, it would feel like a waste to not use all of that talent and what they've learned from Prime Remastered and Prime 4 and not immediately apply it to a Metroid Prime 5. And that leaves one other developer that has been mysteriously absent, kind of, for the past, 7 years, and that is Playtonic. Playtonic is a developer made up of mostly former Rare staff. A lot of these people actually worked on the original Donkey Kong Country trilogy. And I want to say it was back in 2016 they released Yooka-Laylee, which was a 3D platformer in the style of Banjo-Kazooie. Then in 2019 they released Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, and now it's been 6 years, and all they have to show for it is an announcement of a Yooka-Laylee remake or remaster. So there is a very big 6-year gap there, and part of me does wonder, based on how we know Nintendo likes to sit on finished games, based on, the speculation that maybe the Switch 2 was delayed, could Playtonic have made a 2D Donkey Kong game in that time, and maybe they're just sitting on it? Because that 6-year gap, maybe Playtonic had a canceled game or something, but that 6-year gap between Impossible Lair to the announcement of Yooka-Laylee feels incredibly weird. I would hope that Playtonic didn't have a game in development that got canceled. That's always super unfortunate. But maybe Nintendo went back to the source. I have not played Impossible Lair or the original Yooka-Laylee, but I know the consensus was that Impossible Lair, the 2D Donkey Kong Country inspired Yooka-Laylee game, the consensus was that that game was like really good. I heard that it was a really great 2D platformer. It'd be cool if Nintendo had a full circle moment of having them make a new Donkey Kong Country game. And once again, just based on that big gap between Impossible Lair and Replayly, I feel like that actually might be a distinct possibility that they have a 2D Donkey Kong game that they already made and are sitting on, because that's a weird gap, man. But we'll have to wait and see. Like I said earlier, I do think there is a good chance of there being a Donkey Kong game announced on April 2nd as part of that Switch 2 showcase, but I don't know how much they want to front load this direct, and maybe they would save a Donkey Kong announcement for later in the year, or even in early 2026 if it's a later 2026 release. Maybe you don't show it so soon, so maybe we'll be left wondering for a little while longer, but I do think the future of Donkey Kong is bright. Be it the theme park, be it the new design, be it a potential Donkey Kong spinoff, or even just Donkey Kong's inclusion in the new movie. And just considering how basically every other Nintendo franchise had their moment on Switch, I think Donkey Kong is going to have its moment on Switch 2 very early in the Switch 2 life cycle. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you agree or disagree that we could see a new Donkey Kong game very soon? And if so, who do you think is developing it? Based on the rumors, I guess I want to say EPD8 making a 2D game is the likeliest scenario, but I do like the Playtonic theory I've concocted here, because once again, 6 years for them to make a remake of their own game that they had released a couple years prior feels a little weird. But as always, subscribe here for more Nintendo content, Donkey Kong content, all that fun stuff. Follow me on Twitter at BoTalksGames, and check out my other channel at It's Amiibo. You can check out some other videos here that YouTube will recommend you. And until next time, peace.